Before I do start this video, make sure to use my TCG player affiliate down below if you're looking for any of these singles that I talk about today. Also, this channel is sponsored by Arcane Fortress. If you're looking for the best deck boxes around, make sure to use my link down below in the description to check them out. One other way you can support the channel is by becoming a patron. There are some great benefits of being a patron to the channel, such as giveaways, deck advice, and more when you do join. Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Devin coming back at you with another video today on Pub Stomp MTG, and with Bloomburrow coming to Magic the Gathering, there is one commander that is honestly quite cracked in the token strategy. And the commander I am referring to is Baylen, the Haymaker. So this is a Naya colored commander that is pretty strong and pretty ridiculous. It's going to fit into a lot of decks in the 99, but honestly is a pretty good engine as a commander itself. So let's first read what it does. So it's a legendary creature, Rabbit Warrior. It does cost red, green, and a white only, just 3 mana for a 4/3 body. It has 3 different options that you can choose from, not actually tapping itself, but it's just an ability you can use. The first one is tap 2 untapped tokens you control, add 1 mana of any color. Tap 3 untapped tokens you control, draw a card. And the last one, tap 4 untapped tokens you control, put 3 1/1 counters on Balin. It gains trample until on a turn. So there's a lot of things that you do want in a commander. First is card draw and ramp, and this is providing both. It's providing that option to get us mana. And so I think this is quite flavorful as a rabbit because, of course, tokens, you think of tokens as like going out of control commander, and there's the common phrase breeding like rabbits. So I think a token theme with Balin and a lot of different rabbits are a perfect setup. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's talk about Balin and talk about cards that you should put in the 99. So the theme is pretty obvious in this deck. We want to make a lot of tokens on the battlefield so that we can tap them for various abilities with our commanders, so why not double them by using cards like Annoyed Procession, Parallel Lives, and Mondrak Glory Dominus. Typically you will only see like 1 or 2 tokens enter the battlefield at a time with one kind of effect, but having one of these options on the battlefield will produce double. And with Balin, we want to make sure we get as much tokens on the battlefield so that if we want to use an ability like getting mana, drawing cards, or make it even buffer, we can use one of these options to do that. But let's take it a step further. Let's talk about some other token doublers or even triplers that are better than these options with Ohertak, Deepest Foundation, and Doubling Season. Depending on what kind of route you are going with your commander, Ohertak will make 3 tokens on the battlefield that are creatures instead of just 1. And what's really nice about our commander's abilities, we don't necessarily have to worry about summoning sickness with our tokens because we have that ability with Balin to activate it. So that way we can just tap those tokens that have summoning sickness because Balin has the ability, not the tokens. But 3 is a magical number with Balin. We could just tap 3 tokens to draw a card. We want to make sure we get a full grip so that we can get our engine going and our game plan online. Doubling Season, outside of doubling the tokens, will double the number of 1/1 counters we put on creatures like Balin. Instead of putting 3 1/1 counters on them, we'll put 6 1/1 counters on them when we tap 4 untapped tokens. I didn't want to spend too much time on these options because everybody knows them, everybody loves them. These are going to be great fits in the deck, no question about it. But one I did want to highlight is Ocelot Pride. This is an absolutely adorable card. I put this in my wife's cat deck, but for 1 mana, it's a 1/1 with First Strike and Lifelink and Ascend. And at the beginning of end step, if you gain life this turn, create a 1/1 white creature token. And if you have the City's Blessing, for each token you control that enter the battlefield this turn, create a token that's a copy of it, so basically like a Doubling Season effect. Plus this is pretty efficient because we're going to get that Ascend ability so fast, and all for 1 mana is pretty crazy. We're going to be making a token anyways at the beginning of our end step as long as we gained a life, which is pretty easy to do because it itself does have lifelink. So this makes a token on the battlefield, but it will make an additional one if we go to our end step and if we ascended that game. But let's move on to a great card that was from the big score in Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Ultec Matter Weaver for 2 and a white. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you choose 1, create a gnome creature token, or you create a token that's a copy of target artifact you control. I mean, as long as it's an artifact token, not an actual artifact, that would be absolutely busted. This is a pretty heavy creature deck, so having this option just to make a lot of gnomes on the battlefield or copy an artifact like a treasure token, a clue token, or any of those type of tokens is going to be great. And consistently, we should be making a token at least once per turn, so Benny Bragg's Zoologist is going to be incredible in this deck. It does have Convoke, and at the beginning of each end step, if you created a token this turn, you draw a card. There are plenty of ways where we could just make tokens on each opponent's turn, so that way we could just take advantage of that ability to draw cards at least once each turn, including our opponent's turn. Plus this was reprinted in Murders at Karlov Manor a long time ago. I don't think the price is too expensive, but it's still a pretty decent card in the deck. So I've talked about cards that synergize with tokens, whether we're doubling them or in some otherwise getting value out of them. I wanted to focus now on token engines. For example, the new version of a Johnny that was in Modern Horizons 3 is an excellent choice because it itself enters the battlefield with a token, and if you do somehow get it to flip, it does have great modes, putting 1/1 counter on each cat you control. Its 0 ability is essentially making a token on the battlefield and can act as removal, and its -4 ability is a really good removal piece too. But I mainly like it for that 0 ability. Having that ability to just constantly remove something on the battlefield and getting tokens is a plus for me. But let's move on to Anim Pakal. This is absolutely incredible. Whenever you attack with one or more non-gnome creatures, put a 1/1 counter on Anim Pakal, then create X 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens depending on the number of 1/1 counters on Anim Pakal. This is really just going to snowball in value for us, making more and more gnome artifact creature tokens on the battlefield that we could tap later on for mana, drawing cards, or buffing up our commander. Speaking of gnomes, Tendershoot Dryad and Illustrious Wanderglyph are excellent as well. Both of these are essentially the same. Tendershoot Dryad does focus on saplings, Illustrious Wanderglyph does focus on gnome artifact creature tokens, putting them on the battlefield. If you have the City's Blessing, Tendershoot Dryad, for example, will buff up all your sapling creature tokens, and Illustrious Wanderglyph will buff up all your artifact creature tokens. And that's kind of perfect because it does synergize with a lot of different creatures we do have on the battlefield, because for example, Anim Pakal is going to make a lot of gnomes that are artifact creatures, so this is just going to buff them up even further. Plus, like I mentioned, this does synergize with many Brax because we're making tokens on each upkeep, so we get a draw card at the beginning of the next end step. But let's dive into the next card. This one's a Commander Classic with Risk the Redeemed. This is a classic favorite that a lot of people loved and cherished as a commander itself because it focuses on tokens. This has two different tap abilities. The first tap ability, you make a 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature token, and for the next tap ability, for each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. So that's what we want to do, especially if we have so much creature tokens on the battlefield. With our commander out, we're going to be getting so much value essentially. We're not only focusing on creature tokens because it's any kind of token we could tap for with our commander, so why not add in Academy Manufactor and Tireless Provisioner. On landfall, Tireless Provisioner will make a food or a treasure token for us, and Academy Manufactor, when we make one of those, we can make an additional clue, food, or a treasure token if we make one of those options. But if you really do have a deep pocket, Smothering Tithe is going to be an incredible one for you because whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2 mana. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Honestly, you either love it or you hate it. I absolutely love it because it's going to get us so much more advantage in the game, especially if we make more and more treasure tokens. We could tap them for each of those modes that our commander does have. Another treasure producer I did want to highlight is the Reaver Cleaver. This is going to be absolutely, and I mean absolutely insane in this deck. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, create that many treasure tokens. So if you have the Reaver Cleaver equipped with Baylen, this is going to be absolutely nutty because Baylen will be a 5/4 at the start if you didn't put any counters on it. So if you swing in with Baylen, you're going to make 5 treasure tokens. Then you could tap those treasure tokens to make Baylen even bigger, making it like a 8/7. Swing in the next turn, make 8 treasure tokens, repeat the process every combat you go into, and honestly, that just seems absolutely disgusting. So that in itself can be a win con, but there's a lot of other win cons that you could take advantage of. Of course, in token strategies, there's absolutely abundant amount of things that you could win over with, because Baylen is technically an infinite outlet for tokens specifically. If you wanted to go in the situation of using Temur Sabertooth and Dockside Extortionist, this is more of a degenerate combo and a CDH combo. As long as you're making more treasures than activated cost of Temur Sabertooth and Dockside Extortionist mana cost, you can make unlimited treasures. Instead of using Temur Sabertooth, you could also use Emil the Blessed, which is more mana efficient essentially. As long as Dockside Extortionist can generate 4 more treasures on the battlefield with its enter the battlefield trigger, Emil the Blessed can just constantly flicker it back and forth to put unlimited treasure on the battlefield. And then with all that treasure, we could basically do what we want with it with Balin's ability, because they are tokens after all. So either we could tap all that treasure for mana, we could also draw our whole entire deck, we could also make Baylen absolutely huge. So if you get this combo essentially settled, you're going to win the game as long as you have like a Walking Ballista in your deck so that you can just ping everybody with all that mana that you do have. Or I guess trample over somebody with a huge giant Baylen on the battlefield. But either way, you want to have some way to win because this is only going to draw you a whole entire deck. But if you truly want to go degenerate with this commander, you could use Kiki Jiki, the totally not busted away to win the game, and some kind of effect to blink him or untap Kiki Jiki. I use Felidar Guardian as an example of that. This combo is actually pretty suitable in this deck because of course with Kiki Jiki you're going to make infinite Felidar Guardian tokens on the battlefield. Then just to give yourself some insurance, because some people will have like a Settle the Wreckage, you could have an option to basically just draw your whole entire deck by using some of those tokens to tap them. So that way you could have some interaction for somebody that has like a Settle the Wreckage or some kind of effect that will basically nombo the Kiki Jiki and Felidar Guardian combo. But for you casuals that want to win the game, this one is an excellent choice. Halo Fountain is essentially a great win con in the deck because it has 3 different modes. The first mode, you can pay white and tap it, untap a tapped creature you control, create a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. The next mode, pay 2 white mana, tap it, untap 2 tapped creatures you control, draw a card, and pay 5 white, tap it, untap 15 tapped creatures you control, you win the game. So these two basically synergize with each other because Halo Fountain, you want to make sure that you could untap things on the battlefield. They have to be tapped at first. Of course, Baylen is an outlet for that. We could just tap our tokens on the battlefield so that we could then activate Halo Fountain if we wish. This is probably the easiest include and the easiest win con that you can have in the deck with Baylen, and honestly, it works so well with each other. However, that's going to do it for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for coming by and watching this deck tech around Baylen the Haymaker. This is one incredible commander, definitely top 3 commanders of the entire Bloomburrow series for sure. Of course, that is power level wise. I do feel like this is incredibly powerful. Of course, the more tokens you do have on the battlefield, the more you can abuse his 3 abilities. But like I mentioned at the start of this video, it does everything for you. It could tap for mana, it could essentially tap for card draw, and it could buff itself up if you need a win con on the table, because it will give itself trample too. But I would like to hear from you. What are your thoughts and opinions about Baylen the Haymaker? I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. With that out of the way, thank you for stopping by.